The moorhen was stuck. Two otters blocked its path towards the reeds. In desperation, it tried to fly, but the surface of the water was too wet and heavy. Just as it seemed like all hope was lost, a third otter struck, knocking the moorhen down. For a moment, the moorhen was completely underwater. All seemed to be lost, but then it burst to the surface and managed to reach a narrow channel where the reeds were thickest. However, two otters were hot on its heels, relentlessly pursuing it. What would happen next? Would the moorhen manage to free itself from the clutches of the otters? Or would it fall victim to their relentless pursuit? As the story unfolds, we'll witness the incredible struggle for survival in the wild, where every second counts and the outcome hangs in the balance. As the mist slowly lifted, revealing the beauty of the wetland, a sense of unease settled over the moorhen. It knew that the sanctuary of the reeds was close, but the thought of escaping the clutches of these determined predators seemed increasingly like a distant hope. Now the question wasn't about whether it could evade the otters, but whether it could do so quickly enough. The moorhen took a deep breath, trying to steady itself. It knew that panic wouldn't help. It needed a plan, a strategy to outsmart or outpace these relentless hunters. Yet in the face of such determined adversaries, what options did it really have? It started paddling harder, hoping to gain precious seconds. Meanwhile, the otter family continued to advance, closing in on their prey. They knew the moorhen was trapped, and the prospect of a meal was tantalizingly close. Still, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against it, the moorhen refused to give in. Driven by instinct, it fought tooth and nail, clawing at the water, trying desperately to create some space. This desperate struggle lasted what felt like an eternity, each passing moment intensifying the drama of the unfolding scene. Now, as the chase reached its climax, the moorhen had only one chance left, one final opportunity to escape. It took a deep breath, bracing itself for what would be a Herculean effort. With a burst of adrenaline, it began paddling furiously, attempting to make a mad dash for the safety of the reed beds. The question was, would it be swift enough? Could it defy the odds and outrun the otters in this final showdown? The suspense was palpable, leaving us on the edge of our seats as we watched the moorhen's desperate bid for freedom. The moorhen's heart pounded against its ribs, its muscles burning with exhaustion. Every fiber of its being was screaming at it to stop, to conserve energy, to submit to the inevitable. But the ancient instincts of survival, of fighting to live, were stronger. It forced its legs to keep paddling, its beak slicing through the water as it strained to reach the safety of the reeds. The otters, sensing the moorhen's final burst of energy, redoubled their efforts. Their sleek bodies cut through the water, matching the moorhen's frantic pace. The race was on. A desperate struggle for life and death played out on the surface of the tranquil marsh. As the finish line, the protective embrace of the reeds, drew nearer, the moorhen summoned every ounce of strength it possessed. With one final Herculean effort, it surged forward. The otters, in hot pursuit, lunged forward, their jaws snapping shut just behind the moorhen's tail, but it was too late. The moorhen, with a desperate flap of its wings, had managed to clear the surface of the water, rising a few inches into the air, just enough to avoid the grasp of its pursuers. It landed on the other side of the reed bed, crashing into a hidden patch of weeds. The otters hit the shallows hard, churning the water into foam as they desperately tried to follow. But the dense tangle of reeds blocked their path. For a few moments, everything was still, except for the heavy breathing of the otters and the rustling of reeds where the moorhen hid. The otters circled, waiting, hoping to catch their prey off guard. But the moorhen was wise to their tactics. It stayed perfectly still, relying on the thickness of the reeds for cover. Time ticked by, each second filled with tension. Finally, with an almost frustrated flick of their tails, the otters turned away and swam back toward deeper water. When the marsh was quiet again, the moorhen emerged, soaked, trembling, but alive. It stepped onto a fallen log and shook its feathers dry. The ordeal had drained it, but the danger had passed, at least for now. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the wetland bustled with activity. Insects buzzed, dragonflies danced, and fish leaped. Life seemed to be going about its daily business as if the drama of the morning had never occurred. Yet for the moorhen, the memory of the attack was still fresh, the fear lingering like a shadow. Cautiously, it began to explore its surroundings, its eyes darting, its senses alert. The reeds that had offered sanctuary now felt confining, the safety of numbers replaced by a vulnerability that came from being alone. The moorhen knew it couldn't stay hidden forever. It needed to find food to regain its strength. But how could it risk venturing into the open marsh again after such a traumatic experience? Faced with the challenges of finding sustenance without exposing itself to danger, the moorhen was caught in a dilemma, torn between the need to survive and the risk of confronting its predators once more. Then a small sound broke the silence. A beetle, crawling over a leaf. The moorhen tensed, ready to flee, but then it paused. Was it worth risking another encounter with the otters to catch a small insect? It decided it was. Slowly, cautiously, it advanced, keeping low to the ground, mimicking the color of the mud. The beetle, unaware of the danger, continued its slow crawl. With a quick snap of its beak, the moorhen secured its meal. Relief washed over it. Not only had it managed to catch food, but it had done so without being spotted. For now, it was safe. However, the peace was short-lived. The familiar sound of splashing in the water sent a jolt of fear through the moorhen. Lifting its head, it saw the otters emerging from the depths. They were closer than it had hoped, their sleek forms cutting through the water with effortless grace. Panic surged through the moorhen. It knew there wasn't enough time to hide, to disappear into the maze of reeds. Its mind raced, searching for an escape, but there wasn't one. Trapped between the otters and the reeds, it was at their mercy. In that moment of desperation, the moorhen knew it couldn't rely on its wits or its speed. It needed a miracle. But miracles, as they say, don't happen. The otters, sensing the moorhen's terror, closed in, their movements synchronized, their expressions predatory. The game was up. The moorhen braced for the inevitable, resigned to its fate. This was it, the end of the road. Then, as if in a dream, it heard a loud commotion in the distance. A dog was barking, its voice echoing across the marsh. The otters, startled, paused, their heads lifting in unison. The sound grew louder, breaking the tranquility of the marsh. Confused, the moorhen watched as the otters, abandoning their pursuit, vanished into the water, disappearing from sight. The barking continued, drawing closer. A human voice now accompanied it, calling out, asking where the otters had gone. The moorhen waited, its heart still pounding, until the sounds faded into the distance. Only then did it realize it had been spared. The unexpected arrival of the dog had saved its life, granting it a second chance at survival. The incident left the moorhen shaken. The memory of the ordeal burned into its mind. The once vibrant wetland seemed darker now, the tranquility replaced by an undercurrent of danger. It knew that the otters would return, that the threat to its life was far from over. With a mix of gratitude and apprehension, the moorhen dipped its head and began to feed, determined to survive another day in the unforgiving wilderness. As the day wore on, the moorhen kept a watchful eye on its surroundings, constantly on the lookout for signs of danger. It hopped from one safe haven to another, staying away from the open marshland where the otters lurked. It fed sparingly, conserving its energy and avoiding any strenuous activity that might attract attention. The vastness of the wetland, once a source of solace, now felt like a prison, its boundaries confining, its solitude oppressive. The moorhen longed for the safety of the night when the threat posed by the otters would diminish. But until then, it had to endure, clinging to life with a tenacity born of desperation. As twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, signaling the end of another day, the moorhen sought refuge among the tall reeds. It huddled close to the stalks, their rough surfaces offering a semblance of protection. Here, amidst the whispering reeds, the moorhen waited for darkness to cloak the wetland in its comforting embrace. The otters, sensing the moorhen's vulnerability, did not venture near. The marsh fell silent, the symphony of daytime noises fading into a hush. The only sounds that broke the stillness were the soft lapping of water and the distant call of a nightbird. As darkness deepened, the moorhen emerged from its hiding place. It cautiously approached the water's edge, its reflection wavering in the moonlight. The wetland, bathed in silver, looked transformed, its contours blurred, its dangers hidden. The moorhen dipped its head to drink, the cool water soothing its parched throat. It dipped its beak into the water again, this time to gather small aquatic plants, forming a thin layer over the surface of the water. Satisfied with its camouflage, the moorhen settled down, hoping to blend in with the moonlit landscape. Would the otters be fooled by the moonlit landscape? Would they hesitate to disrupt the peaceful scene? Or would they see through the disguise, leading to another terrifying confrontation? The night stretched on, filled with uncertainties and unknowns. The moorhen, exhausted from its ordeal, closed its eyes, trying to rest. But sleep eluded it. The events of the day replayed in its mind, each splash, each ripple, magnified into a potential threat. Every rustle of leaves sent a jolt of fear through its body, making it jump and dart away. Just when it thought it might succumb to exhaustion, the calmness of the night was shattered. A twig snapped in the distance. The moorhen froze, its heart pounding. The sound of footsteps, now heavy and distinct, began to approach. Fearful whispers filled the night, sending shivers down the moorhen's spine. "Where are they? I know they're here," one voice said, their tone urgent. "I saw them this morning. The otters must have driven them off." Another replied. As the voices drew closer, the moorhen knew it couldn't stay put. It launched itself into the air, flapping its wings frantically. It soared above the wetland, the wind whipping through its feathers as it flew toward the safety of the tall trees at the edge of the marsh. The voices below it continued to search, their words echoing in the stillness. "There you go," one exclaimed. "Look, can't you see it?" As the moorhen disappeared into the darkness of the trees, it heard the footsteps pause. The voices now distant, the moorhen dared to land. Relief washed over it. It had made it, for now, it was safe. The threat of the otters still loomed, but the human presence had shifted the balance of power. It was a precarious existence, a constant game of cat and mouse. But for this night, the moorhen had won a reprieve. As the full moon climbed higher in the sky, bathing the wetland in its ethereal glow, the moorhen found solace among the tall trees, its heart still racing from its daring flight. The ordeal had left it shaken, but also strangely invigorated. It had stared death in the face and come out on top. The encounter had been a stark reminder of the harsh realities of life in the wild, where survival was a daily challenge. Yet it was also a testament to the resilience of nature, the tenacity of life in the face of constant threats. The moorhen ruffled its feathers, readying itself for a night of fitful sleep. It knew that the otters would be back, that the dangerous game was far from over. But for now, it allowed itself a moment of rest, grateful for the sanctuary of the trees and the faint glimmer of hope that shone through the darkness. The night was far from over, and the moorhen's ordeal was only one part of the wild drama that played out in the wetlands. The otters, driven and relentless, were preparing for their own nighttime hunt, oblivious to the fact that their quarry had escaped their clutches. The marsh, once again, was about to come alive under the cloak of darkness, with new challenges and dangers lurking around every bend.